Chapter 1. A Drizzle of Mystery. A fine grey drizzle shrouded London in its customary melancholy as Hercule Poirot descended the narrow steps into the vestibule of the Grosvenor Club. The grand establishment, with its polished oak panels and gilt-framed portraits of past dignitaries, presented a warm refuge to those who braved the April chill. Yet, as Poirot stepped across the bronzed threshold, his little grey cells quivered with the distinct promise of a puzzle. He paused before the umbrella stand, a cylindrical ebony case inlaid with brass peacock motifs, and allowed his keen eyes to absorb every detail. Beside it stood Captain Arthur Hastings, his dripping umbrella propped against a mahogany bench. Hastings doffed his bowler and offered Poirot a genial nod. "Why the contemplative look, Hercule?" Hastings inquired, shaking a rivulet from his lapel dot Poirot's pince-nez perched at the bridge of his nose as he craned slightly to study the stand. "Mon ami," he replied softly. "Notice how the umbrellas are arrayed. 3 gentlemen's black ones at the rear, 2 ladies' frilled, examples at the front, and yet here an extra umbrella with a scarlet handle, bearing no tag or crest. Its owner did not sign it in, or—" He tapped the stand's brass rim. "Our attendant neglected his duty. In either case, that umbrella is an anomaly." Hastings frowned as a club attendant, Mr. Bernard Doyle, hurried forward. His crisp, uniform and stiff posture bespoke a man determined to maintain order. He offered apologies for the drip upon Poirot's cuff. "Forgive the oversight, Monsieur Poirot. Our policy requires each member to label their umbrella. I shall attend to this at once." Poirot inclined his head coolly. "Thank you, Bernard. Yet I must ask, who might own a scarlet-handled brolly among our esteemed members?" Mr. Doyle's eyes darted to the stand. I do not know, sir. No gentleman would leave such a conspicuous umbrella unclaimed for long." At that moment, Lady Constance Wickliffe swept into the hall, clutching her own ivory-handled parasol. Her flowing sable coat and pearl-bordered hat lent her an air of theatrical elegance. She paused mid-step at the very stand Poirot surveyed, drawing in a sharp breath. "My umbrella!" she exclaimed, extending a gloved hand toward the scarlet handle. "How extraordinary! I thought I left it here only moments ago, but—" She drew the brolly outward and found it decidedly heavier than her own. She snapped it open. "Why, this is not mine at all!" Poirot stepped forward. "Indeed, madam, you appear to have retrieved an umbrella, not your own." He noted the stand's base, scuffed as though the scarlet-handled shaft had scraped it more than once. Lady Constance peered at him with a flutter of annoyance. "This is most vexing. I insisted upon red for its cheerfulness. Where has mine gone? And whose is this?" "As you wish, madam," Poirot replied, folding the umbrella with fastidious care. "Permit me to investigate." They made for the club's billiard-room, a heavy velvet panel door into which Poirot nudged Doyle. Inside, smoke lazily twisted from a half-dozen cigars. The green felt tables sat unused. Hastings attached his umbrella to the rack, which bore no sign of the red one, and Lady Constance sank into a high-backed leather chair. Poirot addressed the attendant. "Bernard, have you observed any member depart with a scarlet-handled umbrella? Or perhaps noted a similar one within the cloakroom?" Mr. Doyle shook his head. "No, monsieur. Lady Constance's brolly was the only scarlet one I have seen since this morning." Hastings struck a match for his cigar. Then someone must have swapped umbrellas, either by mistake or design. Poirot circled the billiard table. Fingers steepled. Swaps may be innocent. Two alike could be exchanged when the holders are distracted. Yet here we have a unique umbrella. Scarlet handle, polished ebony shaft, and a hidden secret. He withdrew a slim leather notebook from his coat pocket. "Allow me to examine the handle." Lady Constance handed him the umbrella, and Poirot scrutinized the handle with his magnifier. A silver band engraved with the initials F.P. and a tiny, inconspicuous latch. He pressed it gently. The silver band clicked, revealing a hollow compartment. Inside lay a folded slip of embroidered silk, bearing a single word in fine script. "Midnight." Hastings whistled. "What on earth can that mean?" Lady Constance leaned forward, eyes wide. Midnight. Why, that was the hour set for the secret meeting between my niece, the Honourable Margaret Wycliffe, and her suitor, Mr. Frederick Pembroke. She paused, covering her mouth. I cautioned her to be discreet, but now perhaps word of this meeting has reached someone who wishes to interfere. Poirot's moustaches twitched. Precisely. An advice note, intended for Margaret, concealed in her aunt's umbrella. Only certain hands, those familiar with the latch, could deposit it here. We have, Hastings, the makings of a clandestine message and an attempted compromise. Doyle stepped forward, voice urgent. "Madame, the Honourable Margaret Wycliffe is at this moment in the smoking-room with Mr. Pembroke. Perhaps you should speak with them immediately." Lady Constance rose swiftly, her train brushing the carpet. "Lead the way, Bernard. Come, Captain Hastings, Monsieur Poirot. This matter concerns my family's honour." The smoking-room lay at the corridor's end, its door ajar. A shaft of dim light slanted across low tables strewn with ashtrays. Inside, Margaret Wycliffe, a refined young lady in a simple afternoon frock, stood beside a tall gentleman, whose frock coat and surveyor's boots bespoke Mr. Frederick Pembroke. They spoke in urgent whispers as the trio entered. Lady Constance's voice trembled with relief and reproach. "Margaret! Frederick! Have you seen this?" She extended the umbrella. Pembroke stepped forward and gently opened the latch on the silver band. His fingers lingered on the silk note. Margaret's lips parted. "Where did you find that, Aunt Constance?" Lady Constance's gaze flicked to Poirot. He inclined his head, and she replied, "In the club's umbrella stand." Pembroke unfolded the slip, reading the single word, "Midnight." His brow creased. "Midnight. But our meeting was at 9, in the garden's west pavilion, to escape prying eyes." He folded the note and replaced it in the handle. "Someone must have planted this here to misdirect us, or to warn someone else of our plans." Poirot stepped into the circle of candlelight. "Indeed, monsieur, that note's purpose was to bring you at the wrong hour, leaving you vulnerable to observation or worse. The question is, who gains by misdirecting you? Who sought to disrupt your clandestine courtship?" Margaret sank into a chair, gloved hands clasped. "My guardian, Sir Reginald Havisham, would never approve of Frederick, a mere land surveyor. He prefers I marry Lord Ardington's son for his title. Could it be him?" Pembroke's eyes darkened. "Sir Reginald has means and motivation, but he is too obvious. This note was too subtle, meant only for one who knew the latch." Poirot rose on tiptoe to pat the umbrella's shaft. "Yes, The mechanism requires a delicate touch. I suspect the conspirator is among those who have handled this umbrella. The cloakroom attendant, Mr. Doyle, your aunt in her cloak, perhaps even you, Margaret, during last night's recital." He regarded each in turn, but only one hand could both open the latch and deposit this note without arousing suspicion. That of a skilled amateur, one accustomed to hidden compartments. Hastings stepped forward. "Do you mean someone like the club librarian, Mr. Fairfax? He is fond of secret drawers in old tomes." Lady Constance gasped. "Mr. Fairfax. He gave Margaret private music lessons. Could he harbour other designs?" Poirot tapped his nose. "It is plausible. He has access to this very room, and has demonstrated a penchant for concealment. But before we draw conclusions, let us question the attendant who first handled the umbrella." He led the small party back through the corridors to the vestibule. Mr. Doyle stood at attention, his polished cap still in hand. Hastings addressed him kindly. "Bernard, did you notice anyone near the umbrella stand when Lady Constance retrieved it?" Doyle's brow creased. "Now that you mention it, monsieur, I did observe Mr. Fairfax lingering near the entrance with an open book in his hand, just before Lady Constance arrived." Poirot nodded. "Thank you, Bernard. That corroborates our suspicion." He turned to Lady Constance. "Madame, let us confront Mr. Fairfax in the library. Please alert the club manager that I shall require his presence." They found the museum-like library hushed beneath stained-glass windows, its tall shelves housing both tomes and curiosities. Mr. Fairfax, a sleek man in tweed, sat at a mahogany desk, quill in hand. He rose with a polite bow, but his dark eyes shimmered with unease as he noted Poirot's umbrella in hand. "Mr. Fairfax," Poirot began crisply, "you possess a talent for hidden compartments. Pray, show me where the latch on this umbrella rests." Fairfax's slender fingers brushed the silver band, his touch confident as he opened the handle's secret. "Why have you placed this message here?" Poirot asked, lifting the silk slip. Fairfax drew a slow breath. "Monsieur Poirot, I admit I sought to protect Miss Wycliffe. Sir Reginald discovered her meetings with Mr. Pembroke and threatened to forbid their union. I feared that a scandal would ruin her by diverting them to midnight, when the West Pavilion is enveloped in fog. I hoped to warn Frederick of the danger." He met Poirot's gaze earnestly. "I intended no harm, only to safeguard her." Poirot folded his arms. "Your interference put them at risk rather than shielding them. At midnight one is more vulnerable, and you gave no warning of the true purpose of midnight. You tampered with evidence and obstructed a private matter." Fairfax's shoulders slumped. "My motives were honourable, perhaps, but misguided. I shall atone. Please accept my apologies, Miss Wycliffe." He turned to Margaret, who stood with Frederick at her side. "And Monsieur Pembroke." Margaret stepped forward, placing a hand on Fairfax's arm. "Your intentions may have been right, Mr. Fairfax, but I am grateful to Papa for prompting us to take caution. Frederick and I will be wiser henceforth." Frederick nodded. "I trust your discretion, sir. Let us put this behind us." Poirot permitted a faint smile. "Very good. The message has been found, the misdirection undone. But let us all learn. Secrets handled without consent can twist into danger." That evening, as the rain finally ceased, Lady Constance and Margaret strolled beneath the lantern-lit archway, umbrellas folded by their sides. Hastings and Poirot joined them. Margaret laughed softly. "I owe you both thanks. Without your intervention, Papa's anger and Fairfax's meddling might have derailed us entirely." Poirot bowed. "Il n'y a pas de quoi, mademoiselle. Every puzzle solved is a dance with fortune, and you have learned its steps well." Frederick slipped Margaret's arm through his. "Let us proceed at dawn's first light, Papa's blessing, or not." Lady Constance looked to Poirot. "May I offer you tea at 5 tomorrow? We celebrate their engagement, later than midnight, of course." Hastings chuckled. "And I'll bring my own umbrella, just to be safe," to the peacock-embellished arch of the Grosvenor Club's umbrella stand. The party dispersed, umbrellas clicking shut and bouquets of relief unfurling. For once, the scarlet-handled brolly rested where it belonged. No longer a cipher in a clandestine conspiracy, but a reminder that even well-intended secrets, when kept hidden, may breed mischief, and that the wisest course is always to speak openly, come rain or shine. Chapter 2. A Midnight Stakeout. The Grosvenor Club lay silent under a slate-black sky when Hercule Poirot, Captain Hastings, Lady Constance Wickliffe, and Bernard Doyle, the club attendant, slipped out through the side door and paced swiftly toward the West Pavilion. The hour was nearly midnight, the very time inscribed upon the silk note hidden in the scarlet-handled umbrella, and the air carried the faint tang of damp hedges. Poirot's little grey cells throbbed with anticipation. "I trust, mes amis," Poirot whispered, "that our presence here will deter no one determined to mischief. We must conceal ourselves until the note's intended recipients, Miss Margaret Wickliffe and her suitor, Mr. Frederick Pembroke, arrive." He motioned them behind a clump of yew, where lantern light filtered faintly through the lattice-work. Lady Constance gripped her ivory parasol as if it were a talisman. "Hercule, I still cannot fathom why someone would send that note. If Fairfax—" She glanced back toward the club windows. "If Mr. Fairfax was the culprit, his motive escapes me." "Patience, madame," Poirot replied softly. "We shall learn soon." Moments later, they heard distant footsteps along the gravel path, then the soft creak of the pavilion's wooden door. Margaret Wickliffe appeared first, a slender figure in a pale cloak, followed by Frederick Pembroke, his coat collar turned high against the chill. They paused within the pillar light, consulting by lantern. Margaret drew a small silver whistle from her muff. "Frederick, if no one answers at 9, we blow twice. But midnight is so late." Pembroke placed a reassuring hand upon her shoulder. "We must trust the message. Let us enter." He stepped across the threshold, and Margaret followed. Into that instant, Poirot and his allies emerged. Lady Constance from one shadow, Hastings from another, and Doyle bearing a spare lantern. Margaret gasped. Pembroke started. "Surprise?" Hastings called brightly. "Or not quite." Margaret's breath hissed. "Aunt Constance, you frightened me to death." Lady Constance hurried forward. "I feared for you both, my dear. Why would you be summoned at such an hour?" Pembroke glanced at Poirot. "Monsieur, we found no one here at 9. I assumed the note might have meant midnight, but—" Poirot raised a gloved hand. "Madame Doyle, did you see anyone near the pavilion earlier?" Bernard Doyle, his lantern shaking in his grip, swallowed and nodded. "Yes, monsieur. I saw a man in a dark coat slip away toward the garden maze. I could not see his face in the dark, but he moved swiftly, canoeing toward the hedge that divides the croquet lawn. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Excellent. Hastings, let us follow the path he took, quietly. Heeding Poirot's command, they crossed the dew-damp grass, lanterns casting long shadows. The croquet lawn lay empty. The maze's entrance yawned ahead, its clipped hedges looming like silent sentinels. Hastings ducked beneath the arch and advanced, Poirot at his elbow. They paused beneath a moonbeam that slanted through the mazes, winding corridors. There, Poirot whispered, pointing to a section of disturbed soil near a low bench. A single red rose petal lay atop the dark earth. Hastings bent to examine. Footprints, small and uneven, led around the bench and away, toward the old gardener's cottage. Margaret's cloak? Hastings muttered. It must have fallen here. Poirot nodded. Yes, and our suspect may have taken it, but let us continue. He led Hastings onward until they reached the cottage, a humble stone building lit by a single window. Through the glass, the silhouette of a man hunched over a desk was visible. Perhaps Miss Fairchild's notes, Hastings whispered. Poirot raised a finger. Shh. He tapped the door frame. No latch, simply a heavy wooden door. Hastings rapped thrice. The shadow stopped. A bolt shot back, and the door opened a crack. Mr. Joseph Roscoe, the head gardener, peered out. He looked startled. Monsieur, Poirot, is all well? Poirot's tone was gentle. We follow a man who ventured here at midnight. Have you seen anyone, Joseph? Or found any cloak? Roscoe shook his head. No one approached me, but I did discover this outside, he said, lifting the rose petal from Hastings's palm. It lay on the garden bench. At first I thought it a gift to my daughter. Then I realized the petals bloom only at dawn. Poirot's moustaches twitched. A clue. The man lingered until the rose's dewy bloom. A sign of contrivance. Thank you, Joseph. He turned to Hastings. Back to the pavilion. Our next clue may lie in the note's provenance. They retraced their steps through the maze, mindful of rustling leaves. Back at the pavilion, Lady Constance and Margaret paced the boards, their faces pale with worry. Frederick, Margaret implored, what if the note was a trap? Pembroke took her hand. We shall see at dawn. But first, let us return to the club and warm ourselves. As they emerged, Poirot called softly, Allow us to accompany you, mademoiselle. He folded the scarlet-handled umbrella and returned it to Doyle's care. No harm done, thanks to prompt vigilance. Margaret smiled wanly. Thank you, Monsieur Poirot. You saved us a terrible fright. As they walked back through the club's misted courtyard, Poirot paused beneath the umbrella stand. He studied the scarlet handle once more. Hastings, do you recall the inscription on the handle's silver band? Hastings nodded. F.P. Frederick Pembroke. But Frederick says he never handled it. No, Poirot said, gently tapping the ivory handle of Lady Constance's parasol. He did not. The initials stand for Fairchild's parasol. Margaret's umbrella once belonged to her governess. Fairfax, the librarian, knew that. Hastings's eyes widened. You mean Fairfax switched the umbrellas, knew the latch mechanism, and sent the note himself? Exactly, Poirot smiled. His motive? To drive a wedge between Margaret and Frederick, leaving her vulnerable to her guardian's chosen match. But in doing so, he endangered them both. They entered the club's vestibule where Bernard Doyle waited. Poirot spoke quietly. "Bernard, please fetch the club manager. We must confront Mr. Fairfax at once." Moments later, they gathered in the hushed library. Mr. Fairfax stood by the mantel, his expensive tweed jacket rumpled, his face spectre-pale. The club manager, Mr. Archibald Copley, stood with hands clasped. Poirot held the scarlet-handled umbrella aloft. "Mr. Fairfax, you left this. For that, it is yours, despite its initial belonging to Miss Fairchild." Fairfax's voice quivered. I did. I saw Miss Wycliffe's niece and Mr. Pembroke meeting last night. I knew Sir Reginald would disapprove. I thought to warn the young man, shift the time to safer hours, but I feared the meeting would go unnoted at 9. So I placed midnight in the umbrella handle to guide Mr. Pembroke here. "Your good intentions," Poirot interrupted gently, "led to a darker danger. At midnight the pavilions are deserted, the grounds silent, not a prudent time for a tryst." Pembroke stepped forward, voice firm. "You might have warned me directly. Instead, you laid a trap." Fairfax bowed his head. "I am sorry. I mean no harm, only to protect. But I see now my error." "I beg your forgiveness." Margaret's eyes glistened. "You endangered us, but I trust your apology." Lady Constance spoke with measured grace. "Mr. Fairfax, your position at the club is under review, but I believe in mercy. I ask only that you promise never again to conceal your counsel behind riddles." Nodded. "I promise, my lady." Poirot folded the umbrella and handed it to Doyle. "Let this stand returned, and please affix a tag immediately." That night, Poirot and Hastings dined quietly at the club's small supper-room. Hastings poured himself a brandy. "Mon Dieu, Hercule, another case of good intentions gone awry." Poirot stirred his tea. "Indeed, Hastings, the path of secrecy, even when paved with kindness, leads often to peril. Yet in the end we restored trust, and achieved a truth far greater than any clandestine note." They lingered long in conversation, the club's lanterns glowing warmly beyond rain-spattered windows, and though the morning would bring new tasks, for now their little grey cells rested content, having unravelled yet another thread in London's intricate tapestry of mystery. Chapter 3. Threads of Deception. The following morning dawned crisp and clear, as though London itself wished to wash away the night's intrigues. Yet clouds gathered on the horizon of Casino Road, where the Grosvenor Club's facade gleamed under a hesitant sun. Inside, Poirot and Hastings repaired at once to Lady Constance Wycliffe's suite, a suite whose satin-lined walls and chastened elegance had witnessed more drama in 2 days than many homes saw in a decade. Lady Constance greeted them with measured courtesy, though her grey eyes betrayed lingering anxiety. "Monsieur Poirot, Captain Hastings, thank you for coming. I took your counsel last night and confronted Mr. Fairfax. He has apologized, and I have reinstated him to his duties, on probation, naturally. Yet I remain uneasy. I cannot shake the sense that a deeper plot lurks beneath the surface." Poirot inclined his head. "Madam, often the first revelation is merely the first veil lifted. We must now examine more closely those whose motives run deeper than officious guardianship. Let us consider who, besides Mr. Fairfax, possessed knowledge of the latch mechanism, and why they might wish to misdirect your niece. Hastings took a seat by the writing-table, his brow furrowed. Only the few who would tinker with concealed compartments. Fairfax the librarian, perhaps. But also Mrs. Digby, the decorous housekeeper, whose work includes care of Lady Constance's parasols, or even Mr. Pembroke himself, though that seems unlikely. Lady Constance pressed her fingertips together. I confess suspicion of Mrs. Digby. She has served our house for 20 years, and knows every hidden nook, and her loyalty to Sir Reginald is absolute. She drew a steadying breath. Could you question her discreetly? Poirot's moustaches quivered with assent. With pleasure, madam. Hastings and I will pay a call to the domestic quarters. Meanwhile, I would ask you to assemble all umbrellas, scarlet, ivory, and black, in this very salon. I wish to examine them at leisure. Lady Constance bowed. Of course, monsieur. I will have them brought here. Half an hour later, Hastings and Poirot, umbrellas in hand, descended into the bowels of the Grosvenor Club. The servants' corridor pulsed with quiet activity, scurrying footmen and porters rattling boxes of trophies and stacks of ledger books. At the far end, a polished oaken door bore the discreet brass plaque, Mrs. Digby, housekeeper. Poirot rapped gently. A soft "Enter" invited them in. Inside, the room was immaculate. Linen white sheets folded atop a dresser, a perfumed sachet resting against a porcelain brush set, and not a single speck of dust upon the polished floorboards. Yet the closed umbrella stood by the far wall, its ivory handle gleaming beneath the gas lamp. Mrs. Digby herself sat at a sewing-table, needle poised above a length of silk. Her silver hair was pinned in a severe knot, and her voice, when she spoke, was firm yet cool. Monsieur Poirot, Captain Hastings, to what do I owe this unexpected visit? Poirot inclined his head with courtesy. Madame, I seek only to ensure that last night's, shall we say, irregularity with the umbrellas is fully understood. May I inquire whether you have noticed any change in our umbrellas' arrangements? Mrs. Digby's dignified posture never wavered. She placed her needle aside. Your ladyship's umbrellas are kept in that stand at each evening's close. I have never handled them except to dust the brass rim. However, last night I retrieved Lady Constance's ivory brolly from the stand after curfew. She left it behind and returned it to her suite. I did not touch any others. Hastings narrowed his eyes. You returned only one? Not the scarlet or the black, even though all were untagged? Mrs. Digby's lips thinned. I had no cause to handle the others. Lady Constance's parasol was the only one left on her chair in the drawing-room at the close of her luncheon. Poirot's gaze drifted to the umbrella stand itself, glimpsed through the open door. Madame, may we inspect your sewing-table? Mrs. Digby inclined her head stiffly. If you wish, but be careful with the linens. Poirot and Hastings approached the table. Beneath the cloth lay several lengths of ribbon, a roll of ivory satin, and most notably a narrow box of white piping. Hastings brushed aside the ribbons to reveal a small ebony cylinder with a tiny latch, an exact replica of the umbrella-handled secret compartment. What is this? Hastings asked, lifting the cylinder with gloved fingers. Mrs. Digby's composure cracked. Her voice trembled. I made it for Lady Constance to hold emergency stamps and notes. She requested it 2 weeks ago. I tested the latch on that umbrella handle quite innocently to see how it worked. I meant no mischief, only to ensure I could conceal her shopping lists away from curious eyes. Poirot held the cylinder aloft under the lamplight. Ah, so you practised on the ivory parasol's handle, an act of loyalty to conceal private correspondence. Yet someone noticed your trial and adapted it for darker purposes. He turned to Hastings. Let us thank Mrs. Digby and return to Lady Constance's suite. We shall examine the umbrella stand itself. Back in the sumptuous pastel salon, Lady Constance had assembled 6 umbrellas in a neat row. 2 black gents, 2 ladies frilled, the scarlet-handled, and her own ivory parasol. Poirot paced before them, hands clasped behind his back. Madame, he said at last, we have 2 suspects, Mr. Fairfax, the librarian, whose motive lay in misdirecting your niece's secret courtship, and Mrs. Digby, whose innocent tampering provided the knowledge of the latch mechanism. Yet the true culprit, who placed the midnight note, must be a third party, one who knew both the latch and the initial cipher. He raised an eyebrow. May I ask, madame, whether any other umbrellas have departed this club for private use recently? Perhaps one lent to a friend or left in the cloakroom at a dinner party. Lady Constance frowned, glancing at her small ledger of members censure. Brollies. Now that you mention it, my sister Lady Adelaide Carrington visited last Thursday and left her umbrella behind. I returned it to the club, but I did not mark it as hers. Could hers bear the secret? Hastings brightened. By Jove, we must. Fetch it. It may still be in the cloakroom. Poirot nodded. And I suspect this note was intended not for young Pembroke's ears, but for Lady Adelaide's, or against her. Let us proceed. 10 minutes later, they stood before the club's second umbrella stand, a smaller rack near the dining rooms. Beneath flickering gaslights, dozens of canes and brollies stood at attention. Lady Constance entreated, Do you see my sister's Adelaide's umbrella? She approached the stand and ran her gloved fingers along the handles. At the far end, half hidden behind a mahogany cane, she spied a slender brolly with a silver filigreed handle. That's hers, Lady Constance said. I recognize the silver detailing. She withdrew it. Poirot took the umbrella and gently opened the handle's band. Inside lay another slip of silk, this one bearing a single word in the same fine script. But now it read, Tonight, Hastings, whistled low. So the plot thickens. Someone meant to lure her sister here at 9, or midnight, or tonight. Poirot replaced the band and pocketed the umbrella with care. Indeed, and note, the person who edited the note from midnight to tonight must have intercepted it after Fairfax's initial deposit. They had to know where Fairfax hid it, within the scarlet-handled umbrella, and then moved it to Adelaide's brolly. He turned back to Lady Constance. Who among your acquaintances knows both umbrellas, Margaret's scarlet-handled and Adelaide's silver filigreed, and would wish to conceal or manipulate your family's secrets? Lady Constance's face paled. She looked from Hastings to Poirot. There is one, my cousin Sir Reginald Havisham, Margaret and Adelaide's guardian. He manages the family's finances, knows every umbrella I own, and opposes Margaret's choice of Pembroke, while despising Adelaide's frivolity. He had motive to separate both sisters from their companions. Poirot's eyes glittered. "Then you have your prime suspect. Sir Reginald is both far more powerful and far better placed than Mr. Fairfax. He could have watched Mrs. Digby's practice, witnessed Fairfax's bungled warning, and corrected the note to suit his purposes." Lady Constance sank into her velvet settee. "But how can we prove his hand without alerting him?" Poirot smiled, fingertips steepled. "We shall arrange a dinner tonight. I suggest you invite Sir Reginald and Mr. Fairfax, as well as Mrs. Digby. I shall compose a letter, disguised as Lady Adelaide's, and place it once more in the scarlet-handled umbrella. Then we shall observe who handles it and how." Hastings shrugged with relish. "An umbrella stakeout, my favourite kind, Hercule." Lady Constance leaned forward. "Do it quickly. Margaret and Frederick leave for the Continent at dawn." Poirot rose, tapping his cane. "Then let us waste no time. This evening, the secret hidden in the umbrella stand shall at last be laid bare. Beneath the smallest latch and the subtleties of silk cipher, and so, beneath the uncertain London skies, the players prepared for a dinner party in which every umbrella would serve as both prop and witness, and in which Sir Reginald Havisham's final mask would slip, revealing the truth beneath the rain. Chapter 4. The Umbrella Arrangement. That evening, the Grosvenor Club's dining-room glittered beneath the soft glow of crystal chandeliers. Velvet drapes framed the windows, and a long mahogany table gleamed with silver candelabra, porcelain chargers, and crystal goblets. The air held the refined scent of roast quail and truffled potatoes. Around Theobald sat Lady Constance Wickliffe, her sisters Margaret and Adelaide, Frederick Pembroke, Mr. Fairfax, Mrs. Digby, Captain Hastings, and Hercule Poirot himself. Sir Reginald Havisham, their guardian, took his seat at the host's place, his expression courteous yet observant. Lady Constance rose to propose a toast. "To family and friendship," she said, lifting her glass. "May tonight's company bring only good cheer." The guests echoed her words, and glasses chimed in the warm hush. Poirot observed each face as they drank. Fairfax's jaw tightened. Mrs. Digby's lips pressed into a thin line. Sir Reginald's gaze flickered to the scarlet-handled umbrella that leaned against the chair beside Margaret. Poirot's little grey cells ticked in anticipation. When the first course concluded, Lady Constance signalled the footman to present the evening's centrepiece, an umbrella stand discreetly placed near a sideboard. Beside the black and ivory, Brolly's stood the scarlet-handled umbrella, empty, its handle polished to a vibrant sheen. Poirot smiled faintly, for inside that handle lay a folded slip of silk bearing the single word, Adelaide. Having prepared the evening's experiment, he raised his voice. "If I might trouble you, Lady Constance, for the favour of your scarlet-handled umbrella." She inclined her head, and Doyle approached to hand her the brolly. Poirot accepted it and, with theatrical flair, opened the latch and replaced the silk note. He smiled across the table. "I trust the club's attendants will return this to the stand so that its owner may retrieve it upon departure." Sir Reginald murmured, "A clever touch, Monsieur Poirot." Though his eyes narrowed as he watched Fairfax shift in his seat, Poirot replaced the umbrella in the stand, then sat back as the second course. Roast pheasant with winter vegetables was served as conversation resumed, Sir Reginald discussing estate finances, Fairfax extolling the virtues of the clubs, new library acquisitions, Mrs. Digby praising Lady Constance's home decor. Poirot remained alert to every subtle gesture. When Lady Adelaide excused herself to the ladies' retiring room, Sir Reginald offered to escort her. Fairfax's eyes flickered to the umbrella stand. Hastings whispered, "All seems calm, but wait for the moment our culprit moves." Poirot nodded. Behind a mask of propriety often lies the swiftest hand. Moments later, a muffled click sounded from the stand. Poirot seized his napkin, and with a pretence of wiping his mouth, rose and edged toward the stand. Beneath the table Hastings rose, murmuring to Mrs. Digby about the dessert menu, drawing her attention away. Poirot opened the scarlet-handled umbrella, extracted the note, and slipped it into his waistcoat pocket. He closed the umbrella deliberately and replaced it. He then returned to his seat, though his eyes met Sir Reginald's in a knowing glance. Lady Constance began dessert, lemon soufflé, when Poirot gestured gently. "Madame, may I ask Fairfax, Mrs. Digby, and Sir Reginald to join me near the umbrella stand once more?" The three rose, exchanging puzzled glances. The dining-room's chatter hushed as the party gathered around the stand. Poirot produced the silk slip. "This note was placed in your niece's umbrella handle at the insistence of Mr. Fairfax." "Yes?" Fairfax's face flickered. "I admit it. I placed the word midnight there, hoping to warn Mr. Pembroke." Poirot nodded. "A noble desire yet flawed," who then moved it into Lady Adelaide's brolly, altering it to tonight, a time that would call her out alone. Fairfax recoiled. I did not." Poirot turned to Mrs. Digby. "Madame, you tested the latch on Lady Constance's parasol, yet you denied touching any others." Mrs. Digby's face went pale. "I handled only Lady Constance's. I did not touch the scarlet one." Poirot's gaze shifted to Sir Reginald. "And you, sir, who know every umbrella in this house, every handle, every latch, had both motive and means. You wished to separate your wards from undesired companions, did you not?" Sir Reginald's lips twitched. "I would never. My only concern is their welfare, and the family's standing." Hastings stepped forward, voice firm. "A welfare that would see them wed to your chosen suitors at all costs, even if it meant luring them into the night, unattended, vulnerable." Sir Reginald's composure cracked. "You know nothing of my worries," he spat. "My brothers. Debts must be repaid. Adelaide's marrying Lord Ardington would secure our estates. Margaret's match with a land surveyor, an unknown, would ruin everything." Lady Constance drew herself up. "Your schemes endangered them. Our experiments have revealed this note, the swaps, the misdirection, all your handiwork." She gestured to Poirot. "Monsieur, the late detective?" Poirot inclined his head. "Sir Reginald, you tracked Fairfax's initial warning, retrieved the silk, altered its wording, and planted it in Adelaide's umbrella. Thereby you ensured she would depart at an unwise hour, far from protection." Sir Reginald hung his head. "Yes. I feared they would defy me. Forgive me." Lady Constance turned to Margaret and Adelaide, who had been watching in alarm. "My dear girls, speak now what your hearts demand." Margaret stepped forward, hand in Frederick's. I love him. My life's work is not estates, but honesty and devotion. I intend to marry Frederick, today if I may." Gasps rippled. Adelaide steadied herself. "And I have chosen to live abroad, teaching music free from the constraints Sir Reginald imposed." Sir Reginald's head drooped. "I see now I was a fool. You have my blessing." He placed a trembling hand upon Margaret's and Adelaide's shoulders. "Go with my apologies." Poirot smiled gently. "The greatest misstep is to bind others with secrets. Truth, though sometimes harsh, sets us free." Hastings patted Sir Reginald's back. "Mon Dieu, Reginald, best of luck to both brides." At deep afternoon, beneath clear skies, Margaret and Frederick were wed in a small chapel near the club. Adelaide set sail for Paris, where she would pursue her musical passions unfettered. Lady Constance and Sir Reginald, now reconciled, oversaw the festivities. Poirot and Hastings attended as honoured guests, umbrellas tucked safely away. As they bade farewell, Poirot placed his hand upon the scarlet-handled umbrella, now polished, and returned to Lady Constance. "The secret hidden in the umbrella stand has served its purpose," he mused. "No more notes, only open hearts." Hastings clicked his heels. "And no more midnight stakeouts." Poirot patted his friend's shoulder. "Ah, but Hastings, there is always another mystery at every turn." They stepped back into London's drizzle, leaving behind the umbrellas, the whispered words, and a family's lesson. That in life, as in an umbrella stand, the most dangerous secrets lurk where we least expect them, and the most precious truths shine brightest when revealed. Chapter 5. The last drop of rain morning broke over Grosvenor Club in a soft, silvery drizzle, as if the heavens themselves sought to cleanse the memory of midnight machinations and misplaced confidences. The umbrella stand in the vestibule, once the crucible of conspiracy, now stood innocuous beneath the broad brass canopy, its compartments once more tidy and unremarkable. Yet Hercule Poirot, standing with Captain Hastings by Lady Constance Wycliffe's carriage, knew that even the gentlest rain could linger upon the mind like an unwatched clue. "Mon ami," Poirot observed, adjusting his perfectly waxed moustaches against the light spray, "the disappearance of secrets from that stand has restored order, but we must ensure no final droplets of deceit remain." Hastings, bracing himself under a striped club umbrella, nodded. "Indeed, Hercule, Sir Reginald's confession cleared the air, but I suspect it would be wise to confirm that no other confidences were misdirected." Lady Constance, elegant in a pale blue cloak, smiled politely. "You shall have your wish, monsieur. After all, Margaret and Frederick's wedding is at 4, and I would see them wed without a cloud of doubt still overhead." With their plan, agreed, the three friends re-entered the club's vestibule. Poirot led Hastings to the umbrella stand and began a meticulous inspection, rattling each handle almost imperceptibly. Hastings watched as Poirot lifted black fiberglass canes, ladies' lace parasols, and finally the ivory-handled brolly belonging to Lady Adelaide Carrington. Each proved empty of contraband, each latch clean and untested save for its regular functionality. When Poirot closed the parasol and replaced it, Hastings ventured, "All clear, Hercule? No sign of further messages?" Poirot's eyes shone with approval. "Yes, Hastings. Our culprit's only message was the silk note in Sir Reginald's niece's umbrella, now safely consigned to oblivion. Yet I recommend one more measure. As club custom, we offer each member a ticket for the wedding, and I suggest the tickets themselves bear no hidden missives. Hastings chuckled. No coded invitations, just plain parchment. Lady Constance advanced, her grey eyes bright with gratitude. Gentlemen, I cannot thank you enough. Please join us at the ceremony. Your presence will honour Margaret and Frederick most. The afternoon ceremony took place in the club's discreet chapel, a painted nook hung with lilies and candles. Margaret Wycliffe entered on her aunt's arm, her white satin gown shimmering in the candlelight. Frederick Pembroke waited at the altar, his surveyor's pince-nez exchanged for a simple gilt watch chain. As Margaret approached, Hastings leaned to Poirot. Mon Dieu, Hercule, I never thought an umbrella could do so much mischief. Poirot's lips curved. And now, Hastings, it shall symbolize only shelter and fidelity. Lady Constance, standing proudly beside Lady Adelaide, whispered to Poirot as the vicar pronounced the couple wed, "Everything has unfolded so smoothly. How remarkable, given the misdirection we endured." Poirot gave a small bow. "Madame, it is the gentle art of revelation that restores harmony. Let the umbrellas remain where they belong, by the door, and let no further secrets fall upon this ground." With vows exchanged and tears of joy shed, the newlyweds emerged into the drizzle-crowned courtyard, where a canopy of umbrellas formed a kaleidoscope of polka dots, stripes, and satin. Lady Constance distributed plain white tickets for the reception, and Hastings observed that none bore the slightest flourish that might conceal cipher or clue. Frederick turned to Margaret, his voice joyful. "My umbrella stands beside the others. At the door, I shall never again rely on secret messages." Margaret laughed, fingering her new wedding ring. "Nor shall I, henceforth." Poirot watched as Anna, the club's keen-eyed concierge, collected the umbrellas in neat rows, tagging each with its owner's name. He noted how Anna placed Margaret's red-handled brolly in its rightful slot, the silver latch gleaming without, a trace of silk or subterfuge. The final message had been found. The rain had fallen, and the umbrellas now served only their simple purpose: protection against the weather. As the reception commenced in the club's grand dining room, Poirot and Hastings took seats at a small table reserved by Lady Constance. They sampled canapés of smoked salmon and cucumber from porcelain trays and sipped sparkling elderflower wine. Hastings beamed at Poirot. "What a case, Hercule! From umbrella stand to chapel aisle. One wonders if we shall ever have a simpler dinner." Poirot's expression was contemplative. "Ah, Hastings, mysteries resemble umbrellas. Some protect us from rain, others from the dazzling glare of too much clarity. Our duty is to see which is which, and ensure each is returned without damage." Just then, Lady Constance approached, Margaret and Frederick at her side. The couple's joy shone like twin lanterns. Margaret raised a glass. "To Monsieur Poirot and Captain Hastings, our rescuers from the stand." Frederick nodded, and to the last silk note, found and removed. Hastings and Poirot stood, returning the toast. Poirot offered a delicate bow. "To love unmasked and umbrellas unburdened." Later, as wedding songs gave way to dancing, Poirot and Hastings slipped away to the veranda for a breath of night air. The drizzle had softened to a mist, and the terraces glowed beneath lanterns hung from wrought iron brackets. Hastings exhaled. "Well, Hercule, another puzzle neatly folded away. Shall we return to Baker Street?" Poirot studied the dancing couples. "Soon, my friend, but allow me one gesture before I depart." He strolled to the umbrella stand on the veranda, where a single red-handled umbrella had survived the festivities. Margaret's wedding gift to Frederick. He raised it gently, and with a decisive turn, tested the latch mechanism one last time. There was no hidden compartment, only the smooth ivory wood beneath his fingers. Satisfied, he returned the umbrella to its cradle. Hastings joined him. Safe at last. Poirot nodded, pressing a fingertip to his moustache. Yes, its secret removed, its purpose restored. The next morning, dawn broke fully over London's rooftops as Poirot and Hastings boarded the early omnibus for Baker Street. The fog had cleared, leaving the air bright and the world unspeakably fresh. Hastings stowed his umbrella in the rack above, and Poirot adjusted his bowler as the vehicle clattered forth. Hastings looked back through the window. "You know, Hercule, I think I'll always remember that red umbrella." Poirot's eyes gleamed with satisfaction. "Let it be your mnemonic for the virtues of candour and caution, Hastings. For in every clasp and latch there lies the potential for mischief, or for revelation." Hastings reached across and clapped Poirot on the shoulder. "Then here's to the next case. May its clues be less soggy." Poirot allowed himself a rare, indulgent smile. "Yes, mon ami. Let us hope the sun shines brightly upon our next inquiry." And so, beneath London's awakening sky, the two companions rode home, umbrellas tucked away, mysteries solved, and their little grey cells ready for whatever secret might next be hidden in plain sight. Chapter 6. The Umbrella That Lasted A. Lifetime winter's icy grip had at last loosened, yielding to spring's first shy blossoms, and Grosvenor Club's vestibule reflected this renewal in its tidy rows of umbrellas polished to perfection. The scarlet-handled brolly, once the focal point of clandestine whispers, now leaned serenely among black canes and ivory parasols, its secret mechanism rendered harmless by open confession and forthright ceremony. Under Lady Constance Wickliffe's diligent reforms, embroidered club crests, stamped tickets, and a guardian ledger, the stand had become a symbol not of deception, but of trust restored. On a brilliant April afternoon, Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings made their way through Pall Mall's bustling thoroughfare, their umbrellas secure under their arms as they approached Lady Constance's new Belgravia townhouse. Vibrant rhododendrons lined the portico, their petals mirrored by the scarlet umbrella perched by the door. Hastings, in his usual unguarded way, hummed a sprightly tune as he escorted Poirot up the steps. "Sunshine after rain, truth remains the same," he murmured, glancing at his friend. Poirot's little grey cells quivered at the melody, for he recognized the words from the club's parlour soirée and approved of their aptness. In the drawing-room, pale lavender walls and silvery draperies formed a gentle backdrop to a gleaming tea service. Lady Constance presided at the head of a long table, set with porcelain cups, silver samovars, and trays of delicate finger sandwiches, scones, and petits fours in springtime pastels. Beneath the windows, Margaret Pembroke, now Lady Wycliffe Pembroke, arranged a row of brollies on a low stand. Black gentlemen's canes, ladies' lace-edged parasols, the ivory-handled umbrella Lady Adelaide once nearly used in her aunt's stead, and at the centre the scarlet-handled brolly, now free of intrigue. As Poirot and Hastings entered, she offered them warm welcomes and seats beside the silver urn. "Monsieur Poirot, Captain Hastings, it warms my heart to see you here," Lady Constance said, voice as soft as aged silk. "Please join us. I hope this tea finds you both in good spirits." She poured the first cup with deliberate grace, the steam rising like gentle promise. The party included Mrs. Lydia Digby, whose precise upholstery work had once inadvertently revealed the umbrella's secret latch; Mr. Theodore Fairfax, the club librarian whose misguided loyalty had sown confusion; Sir Reginald Havisham, whose misguided guardianship had precipitated the entire affair; and Dr. Reginald Elliot, summoned to ensure the well-being of all after late-night stakeouts. Each arrived bearing smiles tempered by memory, ready to celebrate that unsteady era's end. "I propose a toast," Lady Constance began, raising her china cup, "to umbrellas that stand for shelter, and to friendships that withstand even the heaviest rain." The guests echoed her words, the chime of cups marking the sentiment. Poirot, delicate and precise, inclined his head. "Madame, your guidance has transformed what was once a crucible of misdirection into a beacon of unity." He tapped the silver spoon against his cup. "Let the scarlet-handled brolly serve as a reminder that the smallest object may tear apart or bind together hearts, yet in open daylight truth always prevails." As the procession of tea continued, Hastings turned to Mrs. Digby. "Madam, how do you find yourself after the storm? I trust your new upholstering ventures thrive?" Mrs. Digby's expression brightened as she set a platter of lemon cakes before them. "Thank you, Captain Hastings. I have taken leave from club duties to establish a small atelier, crafting bespoke cushions and curtains for London's gentry. I assure you, no hidden compartments here, only honest stitches." She cut a cake with elegant precision, offering Hastings a slice. He accepted eagerly. Quite perfect. No surprises except for the delightful flavour. Margaret Wycliffe Pembroke rose to her feet, porcelain teacup in hand. "I would like to extend special thanks to Mr. Fairfax. His research into Gothic architecture led me to rediscover ancient family records, confirming the Wycliffe's patronage of the club centuries ago. Fairfax, your scholarship saved a piece of our heritage." She gestured gracefully. A round of applause for our learned librarian. Fairfax bowed, colour rising in his cheeks. "Your praise honours me, Lady Margaret. I only regret my earlier misstep, concealing via umbrella rather than consulting you directly." Margaret laid a calming hand on his arm. "We all learn from errors, Mr. Fairfax. Your candour now is the greater gift." Sir Reginald Havisham, once the architect of secret plots, rose with evident humility. In his hand he bore a small potted hyacinth, blue blossoms tight with promise. He presented it to Lady Constance. "For your garden, an emblem of renewal. Though my zeal for control caused hardship, I now dedicate myself to nurturing life, not schemes." The room warmed with admiration at his gesture. Lady Constance accepted the flower with tears in her eyes. "Thank you, Reginald. We all have seasons of winter. Now let us flourish together in spring. Dr. Elliot, who had kept vigil when May was nearly consumed by worry at the stroke of midnight, then spoke. I am honoured to have ensured that late-night excursions ended without harm. Let this gathering remind us that vigilance need never hide behind locks when hearts remain open. With spirits lifted and trust reaffirmed, Lady Constance unveiled her final creation, a hand-carved mahogany box inlaid with a polished silver peacock feather. As the afternoon sun slanted through the windows, the box's workmanship caught every ray. Lady Constance placed it on a small pedestal beside the umbrella stand. This, dear friends, is our guardian box, she announced. Within lies our ledger of light, a record of every pledge, every promise to uphold honesty and compassion. Here, too, rest the keys to the umbrella stand, and no umbrella may leave without being recorded in the ledger, ensuring our trust remains unbroken. Hastings ran a hand over the feather inlay. A splendid safeguard. So the stand stands no longer as sentinel of secrets, but as testament to transparency. Poirot tapped his cane upon the floor, satisfaction clear in his expression. Let this box guard not only umbrellas, but the very principles that bind us: truth, loyalty, and mercy. As tea concluded and guests drifted into polite conversation, Margaret Pembroke stood and began a quiet solo on the salon's grande. Piano, her favourite nocturne, once played to mask secret trysts, now repurposed as a lullaby of closure. The melody, soft yet resonant, filled the salon's pastel expanses, weaving through ornate mouldings and settling upon the assembled company like a benediction. Poirot closed his eyes, allowing each note to affirm his conviction that the most delicate mysteries yield to the most gentle resolutions. Hastings caught his arm as they prepared to leave. That tune, familiar, yet now changed forever by what we have learned. The sweetest music, Poirot murmured, is that which accompanies hearts unburdened by fear. Weeks later, at 221B Baker Street, Hastings recounted the umbrella stand's final chapter to a circle of friends over steaming cups of chocolate. Picture, if you will, an entire club's umbrellas gathered for tea, black, ivory, and scarlet, each a symbol not of hidden messages, but of shared trust. Our case concluded not with arrest or scandal, but with a carved box, a ledger of pledges, and a lullaby on the piano. Poirot stirred his cup, moustaches quivering in quiet delight. And what lesson did you glean, Hastings? Hastings leaned back, expressive as ever. That every latch, no matter how small, holds the potential for mischief or for mercy, and that in the end, an umbrella's greatest virtue is to shelter our truths, not obscure them. Poirot raised his cup in salute. To that enduring lesson, mon ami, may our own umbrellas always open freely in fair weather and storm alike. Outside, London's streets beckoned with the promise of new puzzles. But inside Baker Street, the umbrella stand's legacy stood secure. A reminder that the simplest things can conceal the deepest truths, and that when those truths are revealed, they shine brighter than the sun after the rain. Chapter 7. The Return of the Lost Canopy. Spring had yielded to early summer, and London's wide streets shimmered with sunlight and the gentle hum of traffic. Grosvenor Club's vestibule welcomed its patrons with a reassuring array of umbrellas. Polished ebony shafts, ivory parasols edged in lace, and Lady Wycliffe's scarlet-handled sentinel standing proud in the centre. For weeks, peace had reigned. Members arrived and departed, each umbrella faithfully recorded in the Guardian Box ledger, each handle stamped with the club's crest. Yet upon this bright morning, Hercule Poirot paused at the threshold, his keen gaze settling upon a new arrival, a Giudet, cherrywood handle emblazoned with an unfamiliar crest, its brass ring faintly scuffed. Beside him, Captain Hastings regarded the anomaly with a puzzled frown. Mon Dieu, Hercule, I've never seen that one before. A new member's, or an errant remnant? Hastings leaned in. It doesn't match any entry in the ledger. Poirot's little grey cells quivered. Precisely, Hastings, and when an object stands so conspicuously out of place, we must ask both who placed it here, and why. They entered the vestibule, and Bernard Doyle, the club's ever-vigilant attendant, stood at attention. His eyes widened at the sight of the rogue umbrella. "I was not aware anyone had deposited that," he stammered. "I only record those with tickets." He gestured to the Guardian Box. "No ticket rests for that brolly." Lady Constance Wycliffe appeared behind them, her expression startled. She crossed to the stand with soft yet purposeful steps. "What umbrella is this?" she asked, voice calm but edged with surprise. "I have not lent such a thing." Poirot drew forward. "Madame, may I examine that handle?" She extended the cherrywood shaft, and he turned it gently in his hands. The crest, a knight's helm above a sheaf of wheat, was unfamiliar. Beneath it a seam betrayed a hidden compartment. Poirot pressed a discreet catch, and a slender slip of paper emerged, bearing a single word in immaculate copperplate. "Tonight." Hastings whistled softly. "Not again! Another cipher?" Lady Constance frowned. "Tonight, but nothing meets at midnight now." She looked to Doyle. "Has any other umbrella vanished?" The attendant hesitated. "One of the ebony shafts, sir, Reginald's, I believe, went missing yesterday afternoon. He complained at tea." Lady Constance's brow knit. "Then someone has taken his umbrella and returned it replaced by this cipher." Hastings's face turned grave. "Old habits die hard, Hercule? A rogue umbrella planted to lure someone into mischief." Poirot nodded, and the choice of word, "tonight," implies urgency and perhaps peril. We must act swiftly to discover both owner and intention. They moved to the club manager's office, where Mr. Archibald Copley translated their concern into immediate action. He instructed Doyle to summon Sir Reginald Havisham and to retrieve the missing ebony umbrella from his suite. Moments later, Sir Reginald arrived, aloof yet curious. "I understand there is some confusion over my brolly," he asked, glancing at the cherrywood shaft in Poirot's hand. Poirot inclined his head. "Sir Reginald, your umbrella was stolen from the vestibule yesterday. This one was left in its stead, bearing a cryptic message. Do you recognize the crest upon it?" Sir Reginald studied the engraving, lips thinning. "No, but that knight's helm might belong to the order of the Garter." H. Hastings murmured. "Perhaps a noble's crest, but not yours." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Therefore, the culprit wished you to receive a message, one urgent enough to risk theft of your umbrella." Sir Reginald's eyes narrowed. "But I have no enemies among the membership, save for a few who resent my guardianship of the girls." Lady Constance stepped forward. Perhaps this is meant to lure Margaret or Adelaide into danger, though they now reside elsewhere. Poirot's face grew serious. We must consider all possibilities. I propose a stakeout tonight, here at the vestibule. That afternoon, preparations unfolded with military precision. The cherrywood handle was catalogued, its crest sketched, and entered into the ledger of curiosities. The ebony and ivory brollies were rehung in precise order, each ticket checked thrice. Lady Constance arranged for discreet watchers, Doyle by the front door, Captain Hastings in the billiard-room window overlooking the sidewalk, and Poirot concealed beside a potted palm within the vestibule. As twilight fell, club members drifted home or dispersed to dinner. At 9 o'clock, the vestibule lay deserted, its polished floors reflecting the glow of the brass sconces. Poirot, seated on a low settee, donned a pair of thin gloves and rested his silver-tipped cane across his lap. Hastings peered through the window-pane, eyes scanning the street. Bernard Doyle stood at his post, coat-collar turned high. The minutes passed like drops of ink in clear water. At 10:15, a stout gentleman approached, his bearing brisk, his eyes hooded beneath a cap. He paused before the stand, lifted the cherrywood umbrella, opened its handle, and retrieved the slip of paper. He refolded it, pressed it into his breast pocket, and replaced his own ebony cane. No, he swapped the brollies. The thick ebony shaft slid into the crest-laid stand as he returned the cherrywood. Then he departed at a brisk pace, heading westward. Have you noted him, Hastings? Poirot's voice was soft, authoritative. Tall, broad-shouldered, grey top-coat. Hastings nodded. Yes, he's heading toward Mayfair. Poirot stood and beckoned Doyle. Mr. Doyle, kindly ring the club bell, and Hastings, prepare to follow discreetly. Within moments the bell's sonorous chime summoned the night porter. Hastings, ducking into a heavy cloak, strode past Poirot toward the door. Poirot paused, tapping his cane. Allow me this small indulgence, Hastings. I shall watch for the next move. Hastings saluted and slipped into the street, tailing the stranger among lamplit squares. Poirot remained behind the potted palm. Minutes later, the bell rang again, and a slender figure entered, Mr. Fairfax, resplendent in evening attire. With precise steps, he crossed to the stand, removed the ebony umbrella, and slipped his own umbrella's handle into the proper slot. He reached to the cherrywood crest, opened the latch, and withdrew the message. Fairfax examined the copperplate, word, folded it, and pocketed it. Poirot emerged from concealment, catching Fairfax's arm. Monsieur Fairfax, a moment of your time. The librarian's face paled. Monsieur Poirot, what is this? Poirot extracted the slip. You have replaced Sir Reginald's brolly a second time with this cryptic note. Fairfax stammered. I meant to warn you. You see, I suspect a plot against Lady Constance herself, a conspiracy born of resentment toward her reforms. I thought this note would guide me to intercept their designs. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Yet you act alone without consultation, and you tamper with club property, once more provoking theft. Fairfax knelt, shame evident. Forgive me, my zeal outran my discretion. Poirot tapped the note. Your intentions may have been noble, but mischief nonetheless. I shall escort you to await the authorities. But Fairfax's posture shifted. Please, do not report. Me. Allow me to aid your investigation properly." Poirot considered, then inclined his head. "Very well. We shall see what the note truly conceals, and for whom it was intended." Hastings returned breathless. I followed the stout gentleman, but he vanished into Grosvenor Square. Poirot folded the note. "Then our next pursuit lies in Shadow's Theatre. Let us employ more refined strategy." He pressed a discreet button beneath the stand's saffron tassel. A hidden panel slid open at the base, revealing a small compartment. Within lay 2 slips, each marked "Tonight," and a third, more elaborate, a folded vellum bearing an entire paragraph in spidery script. Poirot retrieved it with gloved fingers. Guests' footsteps echoed from the street. Poirot closed the compartment and returned its panel to seamless wood. He studied Fairfax, whose pale face trembled. "We have discovered both the message and its repository. Now we must decode its true recipient." Fairfax's lip quivered. "The message names no one. It warns only of a meeting tonight beneath the weeping willow." Hastings frowned. "We must seek the willow." Poirot nodded. "Indeed, Grosvenor Square harbours a grove of willows. Let us assemble a discreet search at once." That evening found Poirot, Hastings, Fairfax and Doyle beneath the ghostly boughs of the square's willow, the city's lanterns casting dancing shadows upon the damp grass. They walked in silence until Poirot paused before a worn wooden bench. "Here," he whispered, "beneath the willow's drooping canopy, someone awaits." Hastings gripped his revolver. "Be ready, Hercule." They stepped forward. A dark cloak stirred. A figure rose, gasping in the moonlight. Lady Adelaide. Carrington, tears glistening on her cheeks, clutching Sir Reginald's ebony cane. Poirot advanced gently. "Madame, forgive our intrusion. We came at the behest of this note." Adelaide faltered. "Oh, would that I had gone nowhere! I came to meet a friend, an emissary of my own choosing. Sir Reginald forbade me from accompanying my sister to France, and I sought counsel." She unfolded the vellum. "Read this." Poirot held the document aloft. Its script a confession. Mr. Pembroke's business associate, a Mr. James Alderton, had conspired with Sir Reginald to steer the Pembrokes away. Yet Alderton's own motives were darker. He sought to claim the Wycliffe estates through a clandestine marriage to Adelaide. Hastings exclaimed, "Another plot, this time against Lady Adelaide." Poirot nodded. By luring her here, Alderton intended to force her compliance. He turned to Fairfax. "You intercepted one plot, I another. Now let us inform the police." Lady Adelaide hid her face. Poirot continued with warmth. "Madame, you have shown remarkable courage. Now the truth stands revealed once more. In the square's hush, the weeping willow witnessed the unmasking of a final conspirator, James Alderton, unseen but undone by the brilliance of Hercule Poirot's little grey cells." Chapter 8. Under the Weeping Willow, the Dawn After Adelaide. Carrington's midnight revelation broke in rosy clouds, the London sky unburdened of its nocturnal mysteries. Beneath the gilded arches and marble columns of the Grosvenor Club, umbrellas, scarlet, ebony, and ivory, stood once again in perfect rank, their secrets laid bare. News of the conspiracy between James Alderton and Sir Reginald Havisham had spread swiftly. Alderton's arrest for attempted abduction and fraud, Sir Reginald's contrition and the Wycliffe sisters' vindication formed headlines whispered from carriage windows to teacups across the city. Yet for Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings, one final movement remained, ensuring that justice would not only be served, but would resonate in every heart sheltered by the club's portals. By 9 o'clock that morning, the club's boardroom assembled a solemn gathering. Lady Constance Wycliffe, the newly appointed Lady Wycliffe Pembroke, Lady Adelaide Carrington, Sir Reginald Havisham, Mr. Archibald Copley, Bernard Doyle, and Dr. Reginald Elliot. Poirot presided with his characteristic gravitas, Hastings at his side, their presence a testament to the case's gravity. Lady Constance opened the meeting with measured grace. "Friends and guardians of the Grosvenor Club," she began, "this establishment has long stood as a sanctuary of civility. Yet recent events have demonstrated that even the smallest objects, an umbrella's latch, may conceal the most grievous betrayals. It falls to us now to fortify our customs so that no malicious intent may again find refuge here." Sir Reginald, seated with posture still humble, cleared his throat. "I offer my deepest apologies for my role in these misdeeds. My folly sprang from desperation, not malice, yet I recognize that excuses cannot restore trust. I propose that I fund an endowment for Lady Adelaide's education abroad, and enroll any future heirs in a guardianship council to prevent such unilateral decisions." His suggestion met approving nods. Adelaide accepted with a gentle smile, her dignity restored. Poirot then addressed the club manager. "Monsieur Copley, you must institute a secure canopy for all belongings left here. Not a single umbrella, cloak, or cane shall remain unrecorded. Furthermore, I recommend that each handle bear a micro-engraving unique to its owner and a digital registry accessible only by senior staff. Thus, any attempt at duplication or deception may be swiftly detected." Copley jotted notes furiously, his expression determined. Dr. Elliot rose next. "May I propose regular wellness checks for members who appear distressed? Sir Reginald's sombre plight might have been alleviated by a counsellor's ear before he turned to subterfuge." Lady Constance clasped her hand. "A wise measure, Doctor. Mental health must be tended as carefully as reputations." The group agreed to fund an annual stipend for a resident psychologist, Bernard Doyle, the club's devoted attendant, then spoke in quiet tones. "If I may, I suggest that every evening's closing ritual include a demonstration of the Stan's mechanism, ensuring that every new member and attendant understands that no trapdoor or secret compartment may exist here." Lady Adelaide, seated beside Doyle, nodded enthusiastically. "Knowledge dispels fear," she said. "Let transparency be our watchword." Margaret Pembroke stood to offer the final resolution. "As for our families, dear friends, we pledge that no further engagements or alliances shall proceed in secrecy. Let every union be proclaimed in daylight, every letter delivered by known hands, and every trust pledged openly." Her voice trembled with emotion, but her eyes shone with hope. Frederick Pembroke took her hand, and their shared glance conveyed a future built upon honesty. With these resolutions ratified, Poirot allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. "Monsieur Copley, please have these measures codified in the club's charter. And Madam Wycliffe, may I suggest that an annual festival of open canopies be held each spring celebrating our collective pledge to truth. Lady Constance laughed with delight. An elegant tradition, Monsieur Poirot. We shall unveil new umbrellas each year, symbolic of our renewal. As the boardroom dispersed, Hastings sidled up to Poirot. Bravo, Hercule. You've crafted reforms as airtight as any vault. Poirot offered a modest smile. Indeed, Captain. And in so doing, we transform intrigue into example, so that the next time a strange handle appears, it need not signal conspiracy, but curiosity tempered by confidence. That afternoon, drawings were made of the new umbrella registry, blueprints traced for the living canopy display, and speeches drafted for the impending festival of open canopies. Outside, under the club's porte-cochere, members collected their umbrellas, now prototypes of pride rather than plots. Lady Adelaide paused before the scarlet-handled brolly, her fingertips caressing its handle. She turned to her aunt. I choose to return this as a gift to the club, a reminder that courage, once found, need never be hidden. Lady Constance embraced her, tears of joy glimmering in her eyes. The sun broke through summer's clouds as Frederick and Margaret led a small procession through Pall Mall, their wedding bells echoing the promise of new beginnings. Poirot and Hastings watched from the club's steps, umbrellas unused at their sides, smiles exchanged in silent agreement that this case, once woven through shadow and subterfuge, had reached its luminous finale. As they departed toward Baker Street, the gentle click of their umbrella handles resonated like applause. Hastings grinned at Poirot. Mon Dieu, Hercule! Another puzzle perfectly solved. Shall we hope the next one is as uplifting? Poirot's eyes twinkled in the afternoon. Light, my friend. Wherever umbrellas stand in rank, secrets may yet lurk. But let it be known that under the weeping willow or the club's brass canopy, the watchful eye of truth stands ready to dispel each darkest cloud. And so, beneath a sky cleansed by rain and resolve, the Grosvenor Club's umbrellas, scarlet, ebony, and ivory, remained ever at the ready, guardians of both shelter and sincerity, their handles engraved with glimmers of promise for all seasons to come. Chapter 9. The canopy of Truth Summer's warmth rippled through the streets of Mayfair, gilding wrought-iron balconies with dappled light, and filling the air with horse carriage, rumble, and the faint clink of teacups. At Grosvenor Club, the umbrella stand, once the clandestine crucible of midnight plots, now bore silent witness to calm order. Handles gleaming beneath the brass peacock crest, each brolly tagged, catalogued, and destined to shelter only honest intentions. Yet though the stand's shields lay, unused, its legacy found new life in the hearts of those it had once betrayed, transformed by trials into a lasting canopy of truth. It was on a balmy Thursday morning that Hercule Poirot received his summons to Lady Constance Wickliffe's salon, where a gathering of familiar faces, Margaret Pembroke, Lady Adelaide Carrington, Mr. Theodore Fairfax, Mrs. Lydia Digby, Sir Reginald Havisham, and Dr. Reginald Elliot, assembled beneath cream-whitened walls hung with watercolours of lily-white umbrellas. The long rosewood table, laid with refreshing iced tea and petite cucumber sandwiches, glowed in the sun's caress, fragrant with wisteria drifting through open windows. Bernard Doyle, ever attentive guardian of club protocol, stood at the threshold, his coat impeccably pressed, ready to usher in the detective who had restored Grosvenor's peace. Lady Constance, resplendent in a silk frock the hue of pale dawn, greeted Poirot with a curtsy full of gratitude. "Monsieur Poirot, you have our hearts in suspense no more. We meet today not to solve a riddle, but to celebrate the umbrella stand's new chapter." She swept her hand toward a low dais, upon which rested a single, elaborately carved mahogany, box inset with a silver peacock feather. "Behold the keeper of confessions." Poirot inclined his head. "Madame, I am honoured. Pray tell me its purpose." Lady Constance smiled as she lifted the lid. Within lay a leather-bound journal, its pages blank, but bearing a silver-embossed title, "Under the Canopy of Truth." "Here," she explained, "every member may inscribe their reflections upon integrity, admit missteps, or pledge kindness, sealed, not in secrecy but in shared accountability. No fear of censure, only hope of counsel." Margaret Pembroke, poised beside her mother, raised her glass of tea. "To the keeper, may its pages bind us not in bondage, but in benevolence." The company echoed the toast before settling into plush armchairs, each cradling a slender quill. Mrs. Digby, her youthful vigour fully restored after establishing her upholstery atelier, rose first. Her hands trembled with emotion as she signed her name upon the first page, beneath the words, "I vow to mend what I once unwittingly loosened." Poirot watched as her script, careful and flowing, filled the margin, a simple testament to learned restraint. Next came Mr. Fairfax, bookish and contrite. He stepped forward, gloved fingers tracing the silver crest upon the journal's cover, before he wrote, "I apologize for the misdirection born of impulsive loyalty. May I earn trust through transparency henceforth." His confession cost him pride, yet he stood straighter when he replaced the quill, as though newly unburdened. Sir Reginald Havisham, who had once toyed with clandestine impulses in hopes of preserving family fortune, approached with hesitant dignity. His bold stroke spelled out, "I repent the shadows I cast upon those I swore to protect. Let the sun of truth guide every choice." A hush fell as he returned to his seat, dignity tempered by genuine remorse. Lady Adelaide Carrington, freshly returned from Paris, where she had pursued her musical dreams, signed with lyrical flourish, "I thank this family for honouring my independence. I pledge to encourage others' dreams, unrestrained by fear." Her note glowed with warm generosity, the first inked expression of liberty under the new canopy. Margaret Pembroke took the quill next, recording a promise to nurture her marriage with honesty, to speak boldly of love and never again to whisper in shadows. Frederick Pembroke, by her side, dipped the quill in ink and added his vow, to cherish Margaret's trust and to build their home upon open hearts. Their joined signatures formed a bridge between past injuries and future hopes, each stroke a commitment renewed. Dr. Reginald Elliot, whose steady hand had tended bruised spirits through anxious nights, inscribed his pledge to tend not only the body but the soul, to listen without judgment and to heal with empathy. The final signature came from Lady Constance herself, her words both regal and humble. "I dedicate this keeper to the principle that no secret is too small to share, no truth too daunting to voice." Poirot closed the journal with a soft thud. "Madame, you have woven individual confessions into a tapestry of communal trust. This journal shall stand as a testament that every heart, once cast into the open, may find refuge beneath the canopy of compassion." A gentle applause rippled through the salon. The keeper of confessions returned to its box, locked by a single key entrusted to Lady Constance, to remain accessible to any club member seeking solace or guidance. Later that afternoon, the company strolled into the club's vestibule where the umbrella stand awaited their inspection. Beneath its brass crest, umbrellas of every hue and handle stood in orderly rows. No rogue shafts, no silent creases of silk. Poised beside the keeper's box, Bernard Doyle lifted each umbrella, scanning its micro-engraving and ledger ticket, before handing it to its owner. Margaret retrieved her scarlet-handled brolly, then moved to Lady Adelaide's ivory parasol, and so on, until every permit lay in place. Hastings offered a toothy grin. No more midnight stakeouts needed. The stand would complain if mischief tried to slip in. Poirot tapped his cane in agreement. Hastings, vigilance need not masquerade as suspicion when robust systems uphold integrity. Here, a simple registry guards what once was guarded by locks and lies. As they departed the club, umbrellas tucked safely under arms, the sun emerged through drifting clouds, bathing Pall Mall in radiant warmth. Passers-by greeted each other with polite nods, and children darted ahead beneath canopies of daisies and ribboned parasols. The city moved to its familiar rhythms. Yet at Grosvenor Club, a quiet revolution had taken root. A culture of openness cultivated beneath the shelter of umbrella stands and within the pages of a confessional journal. Weeks flowed into months, and the keeper of confessions brimmed with honest reflections, sometimes mournful, sometimes exultant, always sincere. When disputes arose among members, the ledger provided counsel. When anxieties festered, colleagues offered solace, and when new doubts arose over misdelivered messages, misaligned expectations, or the simple frailty of human emotion, the keeper became a mirror in which all might see themselves without shame. In Baker Street, Captain Hastings recounted the keeper's success to Poirot over evening chocolate. Mon Dieu, Hercule, who'd have thought an umbrella stand would lead to a creed of candour? Poirot savoured a spoonful, moustaches quivering. Ah, Hastings, it is not the umbrella that matters, but the hearts beneath it. When trusts are written in ink rather than hidden in handles, they endure the fiercest storms. Outside, London's rain fell again, gentle at first, then resolute, yet beneath every carriage canopy, and in every hand clasping a brolly, the refrain echoed, "Conceal no truth, for each confession brings a haven of understanding." And beneath that canopy of umbrellas, the Grosvenor Club stood, ever vigilant, ever compassionate, protected by its most enduring shelter, the unwavering light of honesty. Chapter 10. The Stand's Last Echo. Several summers had come and gone since the umbrella stand at the Grosvenor Club first harboured secrets, and now the polished brass crest gleamed in golden light as though it had never known intrigue. Beneath its vigilant peacock motif, umbrellas of every description stood in silent rank, black canes, ivory parasols, and the lone scarlet-handled brolly, now tinged not by mystery but by memory. It was on a radiant June morning that Hercule Poirot, flute of silver hair barely tamed, and Captain Hastings, eager as ever for a final glimpse of resolution, arrived at the club for what would be their last engagement concerning the keeper of confessions. Lady Constance Wycliffe awaited them in her familiar drawing-room, whose lavender walls had long since welcomed each confession and comment recorded in the leather-bound volume. By her side stood Margaret Pembroke, now Lady Wycliffe Pembroke, her bright smile tempered with the maturity of marriage and motherhood. Lady Adelaide Carrington, ever elegant in her Parisian fashions. Sir Reginald Havisham, steadied at last by the principles of openness he had once undermined. And Dr. Reginald Elliot, whose gentle counsel now guided not only bodies but hearts. Even Mrs. Lydia Digby had returned for the gathering, her atelier flourishing and her hands crafting beauty. Without secrets, the small table before them held no tea this morning, but rather a final token. A tiny porcelain model of the umbrella stand itself, commissioned in gratitude for Poirot's intervention. "Monsieur," Lady Constance began, voice both regal and warm, "today we mark the stand's last echo. Its purpose has changed from guardian of secrets to emblem of our shared truths. We ask only that you witness this final celebration before our Keeper of Confessions retires to its new home, a museum of local history, where its lessons may inspire others." Poirot inclined his head, aquamarine eyes bright. "Madame, I am honoured to be present. For every riddle we unravelled here, we found not only culprits, but redemption and unity. Let this porcelain stand remind us that even the smallest handles may guide grand revelations." Hastings placed a hand on the model. "A fitting tribute, Hercule, and a fine souvenir for posterity." He winked at Lady Adelaide. "Perhaps our next gathering will be at the museum's opening." Lady Adelaide curtsied. "I look forward to seeing our stand encased in glass, beside the club's archives." She stepped forward to lift the porcelain model. Its miniature peacock crest shone under the chandelier's glow. Margaret Pembroke rose, her gown rustling softly. "Before we bid farewell, may I read one final entry from the Keeper of Confessions?" She carried the original journal, its pages worn by countless pens. "To love without concealment, to live without subterfuge, to speak our truth not in hushed tones, but in joyful chorus. May we ever honour the stand's covenant." She flipped to a blank page and wrote, "We, the custodians of this stand, pledge not only to shelter from rain, but to shelter one another from doubt. Let every handle bear witness to our promise." As she replaced the journal in its leather case, a hush settled over the room. Dr. Elliot produced a slender vial of lavender-infused oil. "May I?" He gently anointed each umbrella handle in turn, the scent of calm and clarity wafting through the salon. Each member touched their own Brolly's handle, breathing in the fragrance of renewal and release. Sir Reginald, moved beyond words, placed a single blossom of white rose at the base of the porcelain model. "For beginnings born of courage," he said quietly, "may we never again fear the rain." Mrs. Digby, eyes glistening, approached with a satin ribbon. She tied it in a neat bow around the model's stem. "A final flourish," she whispered, "for all the care we have taken." As the ribbons settled, Poirot stepped forward. "Let us proceed to the vestibule for its last unveiling." The party rose, a procession of hearts lightened, and crossed the club's marble floors. In the vestibule, the real stand awaited its fate, umbrellas hovering like silent sentinels. Bernard Doyle, uniform pressed as ever, stood by the guardian. Box. Bates, the night porter, held the key with reverence. Poirot held the model aloft. "Behold," he intoned, "the stand's last echo, a mirror in porcelain of our shared journey." With a gentle click, Mrs. Digby turned the key in the box's lock. The lid opened to reveal the original keeper of confessions, now retired, and the stand's ledger cataloguing every umbrella, every pledge. Bernard carefully lifted the journal and registered its transfer from club to museum curatorship. Hastings helped him carry the porcelain model onto a raised plinth beside the real stand, where it joined a bouquet of white lilies in silent tribute. Lady Constance joined Poirot at the threshold. "What shall become of the stand itself, monsieur?" she asked. Poirot gazed at the brass crest, its feathers shining in lamplight. "Madame, its purpose fulfilled, the stand shall find new shelter in the historic halls of Mayfair, where every visitor may see how trust, once tested, emerges far stronger than steel. Here, at Grosvenor, it may remain only in memory, our own canopy of recollection." Hastings let out a contented sigh. No more tickets, no more silent slips of silk, only Candour's clear call. Bates and Doyle secured the umbrellas once more. Black, ivory, and scarlet handles, each embossed, each recorded. The final entry in the ledger bore the words, "The stand fulfilled its vow. May its legacy endure." And with that, the umbrellas were returned to their grips, the stand's last echo complete. As the congregation dispersed into London's busy streets, Poirot lingered for a moment by the club's glass doors. Hastings joined him. "Well, Hercule, we have laid the stand to rest with all due ceremony." Poirot pressed a gloved fingertip to his moustache. "Yes, Hastings, and we have shown that even the smallest object, a humble umbrella, may shelter the grandest truths. Under its canopy, secrets may fester, but in its light of honesty they find peace." They turned toward Baker Street, their umbrellas tucked beneath arms. The Grosvenor Club receded behind them, its vestibule empty, but for the faint echo of brass and porcelain, lessons learned and promises kept. And so ended the saga of the secret hidden in the umbrella stand, its final chapter written, not in ink or silk, but in the laughter and lightness of hearts unburdened. Proof that with vigilance and compassion, even the most delicate mysteries may find their happy ending beneath an open sky. Chapter 11. Reflections. Beneath the Canopy. The year that followed the Keeper of Confessions' installation passed in a gentle hum of contentment, as if the Grosvenor Club itself breathed a sigh of relief. Lady Constance Wickliffe's reforms held firm. Every umbrella bore its micro-engraving. Every brolly rose and fell beneath the stand at closing with perfect order. And the leather-bound journal, under the canopy of truth, filled slowly with entries both earnest and occasionally whimsical. Yet for Hercule Poirot, whose little grey cells seldom rested, the case's final trace flickered like a candle alight at dusk. A single red feather, pressed between the pages of the journal before. Margaret Pembroke's Vow. It was on a mild autumn afternoon that Poirot received the letter. The club manager, Mr. Archibald Copley, had enclosed a missive from the Mayfair Museum, where the Keeper of Confessions and its porcelain twin now resided, requesting assistance in deciphering a curious inscription discovered on the journal's final page. With polite urgency, they asked Monsieur Poirot and Hastings to attend the museum for a private viewing. Intrigued that the case should summon him one last time, Poirot shared the invitation with Hastings over afternoon tea at Baker Street. "My friend," Poirot observed, stirring his cup gently, "it seems our little red feather still has a story to tell." Hastings set down his own cup, eyebrows raised. Another puzzle about umbrellas, or an epilogue to the Stan's saga? Poirot's moustaches quivered. Both, perhaps. Let us meet this afternoon at the museum and conclude what remains unsettled. They rose, coats and hats at hand, and took the omnibus toward Mayfair. The museum's entrance hall was hushed beneath domed skylights, trompe-l'oeil columns, and cases of antiquities whose glass shimmered in the waning sun. Mr. Copley awaited them near a velvet-roped alcove, where the Keeper of Confessions journal lay open upon its porcelain stand, framed by silver chains. Beside it lay a separate display. Under a small glass dome rested the very red feather that had once fluttered from Lady Pembroke's umbrella into the journal as she inscribed her vow. Now it lay on black velvet, its barbs splayed like a flame. "Messieurs," Copley said, inclining his head, "we discovered this feather between the final leaves, though no hand placed it there in the course of December's annual entry. Indeed, the journal was locked in its box, and yet the feather appeared this morning. We suspect a message left long ago, but only now revealed." Poirot's eyes lit with curiosity as he approached the exhibit, Hastings at his elbow. Poirot donned a glove, lifted the feather, and turned it to the light. Its quill bore a microscopic engraving, a delicately scribed initial, A. Hastings peered closely. "For Adelaide." Poirot shook his head. No, Adelaide's ivory-handled parasol bore a silver crest. A stands instead for another. Alderton, the conspirator whose abduction plot we foiled. But why would his initial be etched here, beneath the final confession? Copley nodded. The museum's conservator found beneath the ink of Margaret's entry a faint watermark, a crest matching the Alderton family, a falcon in flight. The feather's placement suggests someone new to store it with the journal. Poirot pondered. Yet Mr. Alderton is long confined to the Old Bailey's cells, unlikely to send feathers from his cell. Could this be a posthumous warning, or a confession overlooked? He scanned the girls in the drawing-room at the journal's opening, their vows, their signatures. Hastings tapped his chin. Perhaps the feather was meant to seal the last chapter, to remind the family of Alderton's legacy. Poirot shook his head. No, he sought to manipulate the Wycliffes, yet here is a sign of remorse or of revelation, not coercion. We must examine the journal's binding and Mrs. Digby's upholstery. They moved to the journal's encasement. In a hidden seam of the leather binding, Mrs. Digby had once concealed her tiny mahogany latch sample. Now a fresh seam had been cut, the feather slipped in through a hidden compartment. Poirot's gaze sharpened. Hastings, one more secret has been added. Someone among the custodians knew both journal and keeper intimately, and inserted this feather deliberately. Hastings frowned. Could it be Mrs. Digby? She knows the binding's secret compartments. Poirot tapped his moustaches. Or Theodore Fairfax, who studied the archives here and might have returned to atone. Or, more intriguingly, Sir Reginald, who funded the museum wing and whose own guilt once drove him to contrivance. At that moment, the glass doors opened, and a woman advanced. Mrs. Lydia Digby herself, flour-dusted from her atelier, clutching a bundle of fine leather and tools. "Monsieur Poirot," she began, her voice steady. "I came to collect the keeper, and found the journal unlocked. I suspected tampering. These seams show my handiwork, and someone has undone them to introduce this feather. I bring my leather and thread to restore the binding. Please allow me to repair this injustice." Poirot's gaze softened. "Madame, your vigilance honours you. But who guilloiled your craftsmanship? Who sought to return Alderton's mark to the Stan's Chronicle?" She shook her head. "I cannot say. I have not touched this keeper since its installation, nor have I repaired any seams since last winter." Hastings turned to Copley. "Does anyone else have access to the archives?" Copley cleared his throat. "Only senior staff and Madame Digby. Yet Lady Pembroke's personal maid, Miss Talbot, was invited to copy certain passages for a published edition." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Emily Talbot," he whispered. "She alone had reason to revisit the journal, and her aunt's maidship gave her both access and discretion." Copley blinked. "Emily has been away, visiting a sick relative. She returned early this morning." Poirot arched an eyebrow. "Then she is our final suspect. Let us invite her here." Copley summoned Emily, who arrived with downcast eyes. Poirot greeted her kindly. "Miss Talbot, we understand you accessed the keeper for a special transcription. Have you added this feather?" She trembled. "It is true. I believed that after all we endured, the family had not fully acknowledged Alderton's danger. I sought to leave a final symbol, a reminder of vigilance within Lady Pembroke's own words." Hastings interjected softly. "A noble intention, but misguided." Emily nodded tearfully. "I know. I only meant that the feather should rest alongside the confessions, to warn future generations not to forget the Stan's origins." Poirot offered solace. "Your motive was honour, not malice. Yet you must not tamper with historical records. The keeper belongs in public trust, unaltered." Emily's shoulders shuddered. "I shall accept any consequence." Lady Constance, who had followed, stepped forward. "Thank you, Emily, for speaking truth at last. Your heart was in the right place." She placed a reassuring hand on the maid's shoulder. "We will not condemn you, but let this be a lesson. Even symbols of warning belong only where they may be read with clarity." Poirot closed the journal and offered final counsel. "Let us repair the binding and consign the feather to the museum's emblem case, where it may serve as artifact, not interloper. Then we shall inscribe this final confession, that all hearts, even servant maids' hearts, sought to protect the Stan's legacy." He handed the journal to Mrs. Digby, who began delicate stitching, her skilled hands rejoining leather to spine. Hastings stepped to Emily. "It takes courage to confess, my dear, and now your penance rests in honest work." Emily's tears gave way to gratitude. By late afternoon, the keeper lay mended, its leather seamless once more, the feather joined to a glass reliquary beside the porcelain model. Members filed past, reading the final inscription. May this feather remind us that vigilance blossoms only in open air, not hidden folds. A hush of reverence fell. Past transgressions transformed into a promise of perpetual watch. Poirot and Hastings lingered. Hastings whispered, "I dare say this is truly the Stand's last echo." Poirot gazed at the reliquary feather, its barbs aflame in golden light. "Yes, Hastings, here, under the canopy of shared truth, every whisper of warning finds a home, no longer secret, but a herald of transparency." He placed his hand upon the umbrella stand's brass crest, and as long as those handles stand, so too shall the lesson endure, that every story worth sheltering is one told out loud beneath the open sky. Outside, the museum's doors swung open onto Mayfair's busy streets. Poirot and Hastings stepped into the day, umbrellas in hand only against the sun's glare, leaving behind the keeper of confessions at rest, and taking with them the final echo of a case that began with an umbrella's latch and ended with hearts laid bare for all to see. Chapter 12. The canopy's final dawn broke over Mayfair, with a gentle promise, pale gold light filtering through swaying sycamores, the first notes of birdsong weaving beneath the hush of city streets. At the Grosvenor Club's vestibule, now legendary for its umbrella stand and the keeper of confessions, none stirred to meet the day so much as Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings, who arrived together, umbrellas tucked beneath their arms, more as tokens of habit than necessity. The brass peacock crest gleamed in the soft glow, umbrellas standing in perfect rank, ebony shafts, ivory parasols, and the single scarlet handle that had long since shed its aura of mystery to become a symbol of unity and trust. Inside, Lady Constance Wycliffe awaited them in the drawing-room, a sunlit salon of dove-grey walls hung with impressionist landscapes. Along the mantel stood the keeper of confessions, resting in its glass case. The leather-bound journal closed at last, its pages filled with truth laid bare. By its side perched the porcelain model of the umbrella stand, ribbons from the last echo ceremony fluttering like gentle reminders. Mrs. Lydia Digby, her hair now streaked with silver in testament to years of honest work, fussed over a final arrangement of white lilies. Mr. Archibald Copley, the club manager, hovered with ledger in hand, his spectacles perched upon his nose. Sir Reginald Havisham, older, humbler, smiled with genuine warmth. Margaret Pembroke, her daughter Eloise at her side, and Lady Adelaide Carrington, resplendent in a delicate lace gown, completed the circle. Dr. Reginald Elliot, ever the calm anchor, stood quietly by, and Bernard Doyle remained at attention just inside the doorway, as if guarding a sacred space. Lady Constance rose to meet them. In her hand she held a small silver bell, its handle shaped as a peacock feather. "Mes amis, this morning we gather not to solve a puzzle, but to celebrate its final resolution," she began. "For 12 chapters now, this club has been the theatre of secrets and the crucible of truths. Today we shall lay to rest the last shadows by removing the keeper of confessions and its twin porcelain stand to a place of honour in the Mayfair Museum, where their lessons may enlighten generations to come." Her voice, steady and proud, carried through the room. Poirot inclined his head, expression kind. Lady Constance, your vision transformed suspicion into solidarity. Your leadership turned fear to friendship. I have been honoured to guide these proceedings, but the credit belongs to you and to every soul who chose honesty when concealment might have been simpler. The company murmured assent, and Hastings gave his friend a proud nod. Sir Reginald stepped forward, placing the silver bell upon a velvet cushion on the mantel. "It falls to me to ring this bell one final time," he said, throat-catching. His hands were steady as he rang. The bell chimed once, a clear note that seemed to reverberate in furthest corners of the club. May its tone remind us that every confession, every promise, has echoed here and found its rightful home in trust. He laid the bell beside the keeper, and the assembly drew closer. With graceful ceremony, Lady Constance unlocked the glass case with a tiny key, engraved with her monogram, and extracted the porcelain model. She carried it down the narrow staircase that led to the vestibule, Poirot and Hastings flanking her with guardianship. The club manager followed, bearing the Keeper of Confessions' journal, its straps fastened at her side by Mrs. Digby's careful hands. As they reached the vestibule, morning sun slanted through the windows, illuminating the real umbrella stand in regal silhouette. Umbrellas dipped in silent salute. Margaret Pembroke, supporting Eloise upon her hip, placed a small silver plaque beneath the stand's base. To truth revealed, to trust restored, to friends unwavering. Presented by the Wycliffe family, 221B, 222B. Hastings assisted her, fitting the placard with care, and Eloise stood on a low step to press the finishing rivet, her young face alight with pride. Poirot watched, expression serene. Now, the stand stands not as sentinel of secrets, but as monument to mercy, he said softly. Under its canopy, we shelter our honesty. He turned to Sir Reginald. Sir Reginald, if you please, ring the bell once more to send our charges on their journey. The former conspirator lifted the bell, now mounted behind the stand's crest, and rang. That single tone seemed to blossom in the morning air, each chime a promise of renewal. Lady Adelaide stepped forward and swept aside the velvet rope. From this moment, she declared, the stand and its keeper shall depart these walls to find new life at the museum. Let us bid them farewell. With a collective breath, they watched as Bernard Doyle and two assistants lifted the porcelain model onto a silver tray, and Mr. Copley secured the journal within its protective case. Hastings lent a hand as they carried the artefacts through the vestibule and into the bright street beyond. Poirot glanced back for one final look. The umbrella stand, empty of secrets and rich in legacy. Umbrellas standing guard beneath a proud crest. He offered a slight bow, a gesture of gratitude to the stand itself. Hastings clapped him on the shoulder. One last farewell, Hercule. Now what remains for us? Poirot's eyes glimmered. Only to carry our own umbrellas home, open and honest, but sheltered from the rain of deceit. They turned and followed the procession toward the museum, leaving the club's threshold rich with memory and free of mischief. At the Mayfair Museum, a grand gallery awaited, glass cases filled with artifacts of local history, from Georgian carriages to Victorian corsets. In the centre stood a raised plinth, ringed with spotlights. On its velvet cushion sat the porcelain stand and the keeper of confessions, joined now by a framed collection of silk notes, leather latch prototypes, and perched within a minute, glass reliquary, the red feather that had borne the cipher of warning. A crowd of club members, society ladies, museum curators, and curious passers-by gathered to witness the unveiling. Lady Constance addressed them beneath a banner that read, "Under the canopy of truth, the umbrella stand and its keeper." She recounted the case's origins, from the misplaced scarlet brolly to the final confession that had ensured no heart remained unseen. Poirot stepped forward to offer a few words of his own. "Ladies and gentlemen, we live in a world that often hides its truths behind buttoned coats and rain-slicked handles. But when we choose to open our hearts, share our fears, and confess our missteps in daylight, we build a sanctuary stronger than any lock. May this stand and its keeper inspire honesty in every corner of life." As final applause rang through the hall, the curator, Miss Rosalind Chase, secured the final exhibit tag. Exhibit 47B, the umbrella stand and keeper of confessions. A legacy of trust, 1898-1905. Lady Constance lingered by the display, her reflection opening like a door in the glass. Hastings slipped her a small bouquet of white lilies, and Margaret pressed a kiss to her mother's cheek. Even Sir Reginald looked renewed, his features unburdened by schemes past. Poirot stood beside them, a contented smile upon his lips. Later, as evening candles glowed and the last visitors departed, Poirot and Hastings strolled down quiet corridors towards the museum's exit. Hastings exhaled contentedly. "Concluded at last, mon ami. No more umbrellas, no more ciphers." Poirot's eyes sparkled in the lamplight. "Ah, but Hastings, the world is vast, and mysteries abound beyond every corner. The stand's tale has ended, but the next enigma may wait beneath the flicker of any lamp-post." He raised his cane in salute. "For now, let us go home. In sunshine or rain, truth our truest shelter." And so, beneath London's starry sky, the umbrella stand's final dawn gave way to the promise of another day, one in which every heart, unshielded by secrets, might walk beneath an open canopy of unwavering trust.